Jesus is Lord. And he was such a nice Jewish boy. Jesus changed my life, and he's still in the life-changing business.
As Paul said, the love of Christ compels me.
You know, Randy, I think most people don't realize how much darkness there is in the world.
It can't be just coming to church and getting pumped up with a faith message. You and I are all going to have something of faith in us.
Jesus died to save sinners, and you are a sinner.
Shalom and welcome once again to CrossTalk. I'm Randy Weiss, and I am really delighted you could join us here. I have something I need to tell you. This has kind of been bothering me because I've been concerned about the presentation that we as Christians make to the world. And here on Christian television is as good an example of as any. There are certain things we're supposed to be doing. And sometimes I worry we're not getting it done, that I'm not getting it done. So I'm sitting at the coffee shop and I was studying, and I came to a conclusion that when God reveals His power, it brings Him glory near and far. I made a few notes to myself so that I'd remember these things, and just in case you're needing a reminder, I'm going to just discuss it with you. I don't like the fact that sometimes when God reveals His power, it brings destruction. I do not like to think of God as being a destroyer. I do not like to think in terms of a God who would do things that would lead to troublesome results. But you read the Bible and you just don't have a whole lot of alternative but to accept that sometimes when God reveals His power, it brings destruction. And that's what happened to Egypt. That destruction, terrible destruction, death and destruction. Can't really say it any other way. You can't whitewash it or erase it from the book. It brought redemption to Israel. The destruction on Egypt brought redemption to Israel. And when the story of God's powerful redemption is told, people learn about the one true God of Israel. And when they learn of His great power, you know what happens? They worship. People learn to worship God, the one true God of Israel, when news of His glory is made known. In Exodus chapter 18, verse 9, a really interesting thing happened. Moses told his father-in-law, Jethro, about the events that had occurred in Egypt. And he spoke of the amazing power that God exhibited in Egypt. And God's grandeur was made known through the destruction that was poured out on the Egyptians. Now, the important thing to remember is that Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, was a pagan priest. I mean, his gig was pointing people to false gods and worshiping false gods. That's what he did for a living. He honored false gods until he heard about the glorious account that Moses brought of Israel's deliverance as a result of the destruction that was poured out on Egypt. And in the Bible that I was reading, sitting at the coffee shop when I made these notes to myself, the words that Jethro declared, and that was from the Holman Christian Standard Bible, I believe. Jethro declared, "Praise the Lord." I like that. I like that. He announced his great pleasure in the success of Moses' mission and the power of God, and I will quote from that Bible, "who rescued you from Pharaoh and the power of the Egyptians. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all gods, because He did wonders when the Egyptians acted arrogantly against Israel." That ought to be a warning to every nation that acts arrogantly against Israel. That ought to be a real clarification about judgment that comes to people and kings, leaders, and nations that want to enslave my people, the Jewish people. That ought to be a lesson to leaders in our own nation who turn their backs on the chosen of God. Well, immediately Jethro began offering his sacrifices to God, to the one true God of Israel. So what I really wanted to tell you is that cults and pagans and so forth and so on, they simply need to hear the testimony of the power of God, and they too can be turned to know the one true God of Israel. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. In fact, I want to introduce you to my friend, Pastor Israel from Israel. Pastor, what a blessing it is to have you here, and what an opportunity to share with our friends the power of God being revealed in the nation of Israel, so that those who do not know our God will truly come to know Him. You think you can help us with that?
Oh, sure. I live in Israel, and we see daily all kinds of stories of God's protection, of God's work in our midst, in the level of nation, in the lives of people. So it's just amazing experience. Walk in the land and see what God is doing firsthand.
He's alive, He's well, and He's involved in the lives of His children in the nation that He set free from the Egyptians and has restored after so much chaos and catastrophe and horrible things. Modern Israel is a living proof of the power of the living God.
Yeah, it's correct. And daily we see really God's work and protection and blessings. And many times it's just hard to believe how it can happen, but it's happening again and again. So praise the Lord.
In Israel, you have to trust in a living God and believe in His miracles, in some ways, just to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, right, correct. In my case, waking up every morning and there is no sirens, no missiles, no war. We're just praising God for another good sunny day, and we can live with Him and walk with Him.
Well, I know that the story that you're going to share with our audience of how you as a Jewish man came to faith, and how you as a leader among Jewish believers in Jesus, our audiences are interested in what's going on in Israel. So when we return after a short break, I want you to tell the whole Megillah, okay? The whole story. Please stay tuned.